Welcome to the Hardwood Hustle, powered by PGC Basketball. We believe in the value of a coach. We're here to educate, empower, and encourage you to lead like never before. This week, TJ and Sam share what coaches need to consider when building a transformational team culture. They hit on topics such as creating buy-in, winning over everything, outside influences, and living it out daily. Let's get started.
Hey, welcome to the Hardwood Hustle. Today we have one I think is going to be a little bit different, a little bit raw. I wouldn't even call it a vent session, but we're going to just kind of let emotions roll here. And we're going to talk about some things that people like to talk about, people like to complain about, people like to throw out different things from different angles. But we're going to talk about the real culture, not just like, hey, do this in your culture and it'll be better, not just a step here and a step there, but like, what are the real issues with culture? And this is getting thrown around a lot, John Morant getting in trouble. What's the culture of the Memphis Grizzlies? Here at the University of Georgia, we just had something go down where there was an accident, young lady and young man lost his life. And, Kirby Smart's been interviewed about his culture. And then you see what's going on in college sports right here. Will Wade's caught on tape paying money to players or making a strong blank accusation or offer to another player. And you got Chris Beard, who, I think we've all seen or read the police report, and, does it even matter? Does culture even matter? I mean, he gets hired at Ole Miss, and, we could go on and on. And I think all of us have opinions about this kind of stuff. But what is culture? I mean, can you have a really good culture and people make mistakes? Does culture even matter at certain levels, and how does that affect the trickle down? Like you probably see this at your high school or middle school. Like if a coach maybe doesn't have a good culture, but they win, is all that stuff excused? We're going to dive into all of that right now. Like, where should you stand on all this? What should you be thinking about all of this? Does your thoughts on culture line up with where you should be and leading a team that really does have a strong culture? So, Sam, I know you and I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions about this, and we talk about it often, but we never really talked about it, on a podcast, kind of just raw and uncut. We've kind of been a little bit more polished about the things that we've said and said, hey, here's this thought and here's that thought. But now we're just going to unhinge it a little bit and let's dive into some of these topics. So let's open up with your first thoughts here, Sam.
Well, TJ, you coined this a few years ago at one of our first coaching clinics, one of our first PGC Key 5 coaching clinics. You said, a good culture is like a well-functioning family. And what happens in a well-functioning family? Well, you have a lot of good times. You have a lot of good things. You have laughs. You celebrate each other. But you also have problems and issues and challenges in a well-functioning family. But the difference in a well-functioning family versus a dysfunctional family, or a well-functioning culture and a dysfunctional culture, is your ability to overcome the challenges, the struggles, and adversity, whereas a dysfunctional family breaks up, goes into different rooms, talks about each other behind their back or mumbles under their breath, or gets on the phone and calls somebody not in their family or not in their culture and complains and whines, where I think a good culture, TJ, faces problems head on and isn't afraid to address the elephant in the room. And so that's my opening thought. And I know we're gonna get, like you said, a little raw, and we'll get personal here and share some challenges we've had and things like that.
Yeah, one of my original thoughts here is just like, first of all, you have to define like what culture is to you. So I'm just going to say what culture is to me. I mean, culture is really how you show up, how you act, how you behave, and how you treat people every single day. Let's just be real honest about it. I mean, we cannot go behind the scenes and know everything about every culture. So we are not the people to be judging other people's culture, even though we're going to talk about some cultures today, because we don't really know. Nobody knows what goes on behind the scenes with my team. They don't know the conversations we have behind closed doors. They don't know what happens in the locker room and the practice facility when people aren't there. But I'll tell you what culture is not. Culture is just not forward facing. It's not just how you show up in interviews or how you show up on game day to present yourself in front of the fans. And, look, you can make your team do some stuff. After the game, everybody can go pick up trash and throw it away. Like, that's a great thing, right? That's a great thing. Would love to see teams do that more often. Love it when my team does that at the bench. But let's be honest about that. I can make them do that. I can just make them pick up trash. And they can do it, and they can do it with anger. They can do it because they have to. And we put the trash up and we go in the locker room, and we might not get along. We might not like each other. We might talk to each other respectfully. You can make people do certain things, but your culture really is your behavior towards each other, your behavior towards others, outward facing in your program or inward facing. And that's how I judge or how I think about culture. How do we treat other people? What type of energy do we show up? What things do we really value? What are we striving to be? What kind of work is going into actually improving ourselves as people, towards each other, towards our coaches, towards whoever it is, and how we interact every day? I think that is culture to me.
Yeah, I'll build on it. I agree with that. I may say it a different way, but I think you're right. It's how you do what you do. How, you have a culture in your locker room, you have a culture in how you travel on the road, how you treat, the hotel people. When you go into a restaurant, you have a culture, and how you talk to each other in practice, how you address, like I said earlier, challenges, adversity. Yeah, I think it's just how you do things. And that's where, you try to have pillars. A lot of college programs do this. You see it with some high school where it's like we have our core values. One thing we're doing right now, TJ, with our BCB, we have a core four, and those core four things, and we use it. But again, these things don't matter if you don't live it out. All they do is they make you feel better as a coach because you got them on a locker room, or you've shared it with your parents. Living it out is a lot harder. So for example, we want to have gratitude, we want to have humility, we want to have a competitiveness to us, and we want to be together. Those are our core four: compete, together, humility, and gratitude. But if we don't live that out, if we don't talk about it every day, if we don't model it as coaches and get our leaders to buy into it, then it is just on a piece of paper, and it made us feel better for about a minute, but we don't live it out. So you got to live it out.
Yeah. And, so I think one piece of that is just, casting the vision for what your culture is like. But really the hard part of that is to get buy-in and to actually do it. Right. And I think there's one thing we don't talk about enough is if you desire to build a transformational culture, right, you're fighting an uphill battle. Let me give you a ton of examples here. Right. Like, well, let's just look at Will Wade and Chris Beard. We do know them to some degree. Not great, right? But we know them. We've had interactions with them. But from the outside looking in, the message was clearly sent. It doesn't matter what you do, what you've done. At the end of the day, you just need to win. And I think even both press conferences were just really clear. Like, we're just here to win. Like, we're not even going to talk about the past issues and all the things we've done or whatever. We're just here to win. That's why we made this hire. I don't even think they hit it, and credit to them for not even pretending, like they're just there to win. So, coaches see that, and that trickles down. Players see that, and it trickles down. And we were just fighting a lot of things, like the four core pillars you just shared go against the grain of a lot of things that kids are watching on YouTube. I was really enamored reading Pat Beverly, who's an interesting character in himself, talk about John Morant. He said, John Morant has these gun issues, and there's been multiple, sources about, just clubbing a lot, guns, just different things like that. Obviously, he's made some bad decisions. He owned those bad decisions. And hopefully John Morant works through those and things become better. But Pat Beverly had this to say. He said, I think it's just the music these days, which I thought was really interesting. He's like, John Morant's like living out all the things that he hears in his music. Like, it's cool to carry guns. It's cool to be all these different things. And I think there's a reality to that. Like, we are trying to raise kids and build a culture of transformation when there's a lot of things fighting against it, where they can say, well, I've got plenty of examples where it didn't matter and this player still became an NBA player, where this coach still got another job, where there's so many examples out there of that stuff. But we are fighting the messages that they're getting at home, the messages they're getting from their music, the messages that are being sent by people that are being hired. I can go on and on. But to actually live out those things, we first have to get somebody to believe in the vision, like those four pillars that you just said, or anybody, coach, that has their own pillars. they actually matter, because there's a lot of things saying right now that they don't really matter.
Well, I think we'll go off a little bit on a side road with the John Moran. I'll speak to that real quick. I think, TJ, that's an interesting. I haven't heard Pat Beverly say that, what you just said, but I do think what we listen to, what we watch, is ultimately influencing who we're becoming, and it is glamorized to be a little hard. Like, I've heard Shannon Sharp talk about, like, telling John Morant, like, that's not you. Like, you're not from the hood, and that's been a whole discussion. But I do think it's glamorized, and for coaches have to be aware of where kids get attention. So in the basketball culture, things are glamorized to make it about you, right? To hit a shot and put three fingers to the head or pound your chest, to dunk and flex on somebody. Those things are glamorized in basketball culture. So kids will follow because it gives them positive attention. And we, as coaches who care about the team, who care about teaching kids to be a great teammate, to be a selfless leader, things that I think really matter in life, then you're fighting against something that they're hearing differently every day.
Yeah,
So that's one. Go ahead.
let me read this from Pat Bev. I think it's interesting. Okay, I think music has a lot to do with this now. Especially with this culture. Everyone holding a gun in the video is okay. Bling on your teeth is okay. Pants halfway down around your blank is okay. So that's a little like okay now. Back in the day, there was blank on the beach in a silk shirt talking about some, yeah, baby, let's party like we're in the 80s. Everybody had those slick shirts on. Everybody was dressed the same. It's a product of what we listen to. The culture now is shoot 'em up, bang, bang, shoot 'em up, blank. I got this amount of money. I'm on private jets, blank. That's what the younger generation is. Sadly to say, it shouldn't be based on our music, but it is. Mostly based on what we listen to. And that's how it is. And so, interesting thought, interesting quote. But there's a reality to that. Like, you can be preaching a message of being a great opponent, being a great teammate, having humility, having gratitude, praising your opponent, being a good sport, whatever the things that you value are. And they could instantly go into the locker and put on their music that says something completely different, right? They can go watch a YouTube video that says something completely different. They can even go home and get a different message from their parents that is more about the scholarship. It's more about whatever it might be. And so as the coach, we're trying to, create a transformational experience, a transformational culture, and you might have a whole bunch of things pushing against that. And I think you have to ask yourself the question, what is my role in all of this? What is the role what is the role of the culture that I'm going to build? Why am I building this culture? I think starting with that, like, why am I doing this? Like, when I think about my culture, why do I want to build a good culture? Look, I want to contribute to society. I want to produce better young men. I want them to live their best lives. I want them to have valuable and rich relationships. Like, when you really just boil down to, like, why am I doing this? Your why's got to be big, or you're not going to be able to fight for it, because the reality of it is you are fighting an uphill battle. And if your why is not strong, it's really easy to bail on that and just go back to figuring out how to win basketball games. And I think a lot of coaches probably desire to be transformational, but give up on it and just choose to be transactional because it's easier. You know what? I can't beat these parents. I can't beat this music. Whatever. I'm just going to go ahead out there and coach and try and win some ball games, because all of that other stuff is draining. And that's the one thing we've talked about it many times. But what are you fighting for? Why are you doing your job? Because if that why is not big and deep and powerful within you, you are likely to get suffocated by all of the things that you are fighting against. It can feel like a real endless and hopeless battle sometimes.
Yeah, it's a great message. I think we lose a lot of good coaches. Some of our really good friends, TJ, in the last 10 years have left and exited coaching and gotten into administration or got out of it altogether because of that. They let the problems be bigger than the purpose, and your purpose has to be bigger than your problems. I mean, I had something probably once a week, every week of the season this year where for a moment, if I was being vulnerable and honest, self-doubt creeped in, questioning, why am I doing this? Like, man, you know what? It ain't worth it. Like, I just coached the season. I didn't get paid a dime. In high school coaches, they don't get paid a ton of money, but they get paid some money for what they do. But there was moments, during my season, it's like, and then I had to do what? I had to recenter myself, ground myself, talk to God, remind what I'm doing, remind myself when I get that text, when I get that email, when I get that conversation before practice or after a game with a kid and telling me thank you, or a parent saying, hey, I just want you to know you've done this and this and this, and it's impacted my son or my daughter's life. Like, that helps encourage you. And it reminds me, so that everybody does things differently and sources them and gets motivated, inspired in different ways. But I'm telling you, man, like, if as a coach and a leader, you're going to be challenged when you're trying to chase transformation, when you're trying to change lives. And you're right, TJ, it's easier to just be like, nah, you know what? Let me just focus on winning the game. Let me just focus on running this drill in practice. Let me just get this offense running better, this defense clicking better. And that's the easier route. And because you remove emotion, you remove relationship. And I want to encourage, I think you and I both want to encourage leaders. We do have a lot of basketball coaches that listen to, like, fight the good fight, keep your purpose above your problems. And then going back to the culture thing, you can have a great culture and also have problems in the culture. That some of this podcast was inspired by an email I got from a parent who was critical in an email to me. And I for a moment, I had to remind myself, this was one parent. This is one kid out of a lot of kids that had an issue. And I don't even think it's well grounded. That's a whole nother story. But my point is, like, you're going to have cracks in your culture, and that doesn't mean you have a bad culture.
Yeah, and I remember when I interviewed for the Emmanuel job, and I'm at a Christian college, and just being transparent, you and I went to college together, and I was no angel. I was not perfect. I made plenty of mistakes. I did a lot of things. And looking back on it, just being real, I think my music influenced me a lot too. Like, going back to previous things, I would hear this and do this, and I was one of those people. And when I interviewed for the job at Emmanuel, which is a Christian college, I was real clear to them. I said, listen, if you want somebody to bring in perfect Christian kids, which there's no such thing, but let's just say that's what they envisioned, I'm not the guy. I've been through a lot of trials and tribulations and made a ton of mistakes. And I actually think that where I can serve the best is by a big variety of players, and some maybe be that. And I've had that from pastors' kids to inner city kids to, all kinds of different people. And I think I work best with that type of group, a diverse group. I want to be in a diverse situation. But I'm not the right guy if you want everything to be perfect, because it's not going to be perfect. And I want the challenge sometimes of helping those that need the most help. And that was really big for me, because I might not have gotten the job after I said that, but laying that groundwork was important to be transparent on what I was hoping to do. Now, with that being said, that's how our culture has gone. We've had some amazing kids. I can tell you some stories that would bring you to tears of transformation and things that have just gone so well. Then there's another reality to it. Not every situation has gone perfect. Not every kid has aligned perfectly with our culture. Not every kid was impacted, at least in the moment, by our message. You know what I mean? I don't always know. There's some kids that I thought never got anything in their 4 years, but then I fast forward 5, 8, 10 years after they graduate, and I see them tweeting out quotes of things we would say every day in practice. And it did matter, and it did make a bit of a difference. And I can tell you honestly, I get judged on all that because I claim to and want to be a transformational coach. And there are going to be people out there around every corner that are going to try and find something that a kid did or didn't align or wasn't what they expect you to be. And they're going to say, well, this isn't working. This isn't happening, which can also be really frustrating to you as a coach, right? And you are going to get judged based on that. So at the end of the day, you really have to go in there, going back to your why and purpose. You really got to be strong anchored in the belief of what you're doing is right and real, because it will not all go your way. If you're going to get your hands dirty, right, which I think is required of us to make a big change, there's going to be some messy times. There's going to be some situations that don't pan out how you hope they would pan out. There's going to be a kid that makes a bad decision. All of that stuff happens even in a good culture, right? And so that can be, for a transformational coach, can be really defeating. And I would encourage coaches not to let it be defeating, right? Did you fight as hard as you could for the things that you believe would have the most impact? And even when you did that, something went wrong, right? That's okay. That's okay. You can only control what you bring to the environment to build the culture every day.
So, we've talked about this, or hinted, or even just said it explicitly. You're gonna have outside influences. Maybe it's music, maybe it's movies, maybe it's Netflix that kids are watching. I think back, TJ, to a few years ago. I was coaching a 15U team, and my point guard was a really good point guard, was a pass first distributor, really led the team well, took great pride in how they led and distributed the ball and spreading the ball around to different guys. And was going through like a 2 or 3 game stretch where he wasn't himself and seemed to take some uncharacteristic shots. And I'm sitting with him in the top of the bleachers talking in between games. Well, I come to find out his dad wanted him to score more. So what do you think his dad did? His dad told him, if you score, for every time you score 20 points, I'm going to give you $20. And the dad, and I know the dad, I'd call him a friend to this day. And his intent was he wanted to see his son score more, like a lot of dads do, right? You've been there. You sat in the stands with your kids watching them play, and everybody, we think that's the ultimate judge of a basketball player, how much they score. Well, that was disrupting. That was adding toxicity to our culture. Everything I was preaching about before the game, after the game, at every practice, TJ, was getting negated just by a dad stepping in and saying, hey, I'll pay you $20 if you score 20 points. This happens a lot in coaching and basketball. I don't know if you see it at the college level as much as you might see it at younger stages and ages. I would think it's more prevalent at a elementary, middle school, high school level. But do you have an example like that, the college or something along those lines, where you've had an example? It's like, man, I've got a great culture, and all of a sudden you see something's not clicking, and then you see a symptom of it. But as you dig in, what I say, instead of you just rip the Band-Aid off, you do some surgery. You're like, oh, there's a bigger underlying issue here than what even I thought there was.
Yeah, I think as coaches, there's times in our career when we think about, just like we talk about a lot of friends that have gotten out of it, right? Where it's just easier maybe to step away from it because it feels like you're losing so many times. It feels like you're losing with players or with administration or with parents or whatever it might be. Now in college, and look, either you, I don't know sometimes whether it's better just to hear it, because here's what's going on. If you're not hearing it, it's just being said quietly behind the scenes. Either way, it's being said. I mean, that's just a reality. We already know what we're getting into. If you're going to go be a coach, this is one of the hardest realities. There are way more haters than there are fans. There are way more people rooting against you than for you in 99% of situations. And for some people, that's almost just too much to bear in itself. Why would I do this? Because who is, the whole Skip Prosser one, I know I've told it so many times, but I just think it's a great lesson, and I won't go through it all the way again. But goes to a school, 2,000 kids, all these parents like him anyway. He picks a team. Now he's down to 15 kids, then 5 starters. He's down to 5 kids and 10 parents. And then he gets all the way down to like the number one, like the number 2 kid's mad because the number 1's getting most of the shots. And then the number 1's mad because their kid's not getting the right scholarship offers, and so at the end of the day, the moral of the story is coaching is lonely, right? And so when you ask, give me examples, I can give you examples of that. But to be honest with you, I think probably the more impactful and harmful ones are the ones that I can't give you, of the parents that I know are really disgruntled, of the administrator that I know doesn't want us to do well, of the, there's so many more of those examples than the ones that are actually loud. And sometimes it's one, when like the message you got the other day from a parent, gosh, you only got 1 out of 19. And if I was just being honest with you, Sam, like the reality of it is like, there's probably 5 more on there that are more upset than he is that you're not going to hear from. And that oftentimes is the reality of coaching. And that's why I think sometimes it's just easier for coaches to retreat to being transactional, because they've come to that realization that there's going to be a lot of people that are rooting against me that are going to be unhappy. And no matter what we do, no matter whether we change kids' lives for the rest of their life for the better, or we win a championship, either one or both, there's going to be unhappy people that didn't get what they want.
Well, and here's the tension. And I was telling Sarah, my wife, this, TJ, and I don't know. Yeah, I think this is helpful for coaches and leaders to hear. The tension is this. So like coaching to me, and I think it's very personal. It's very personal because it's more than a job. If I worked at the bank, TJ, and went 9 to 5 and I crunched some numbers and I left, this is not a knock on people that are in banking, but it's easier to kind of clock in, clock out. But in coaching, you're taking emotions home. You're dealing with real people's lives. And so you live it and breathe it. You think about it at night. You think about it first thing in the morning. And so it is very personal. And you, as a coach, you got to have some thick skin. You got to be able to take some arrows and darts and know that you'll see some of them. And to your point, you won't see some of them, and they'll get you in the back. And so I don't know, you tell me what you think, but how do you balance? And I don't know if balance is the right word. How do you balance between the thick skin, but also being not emotionless? Because if you try to take all the emotions out of it, that takes away some of your passion and some of what makes you good at what you do, or good at what I do. And so there's like a tension there where I got to know people are going to be critical and take it is what it is approach, but also I can't remove all the emotion from it, because then that's going to take away from who I am and what drives me, what inspires me. And I think there's just a tension there that coaches have to kind of think about and be able to work through.
Yeah, when I hear that, I think about just a bridled passion, like just, how do you harness and make sure that passion shows up right every single day? And look, it goes back to what we've said multiple times, but, that mission, that goal, that desire has got to be bigger than everything else, because if it's not, that flame will burn out, right? And we see it happen all the time. And so at the end of the day, like, basketball is my vessel. I love basketball. I want to transform lives through basketball, and I want to attack that mission every day. And 2, I think the game of basketball, when used properly, is so good for growth and development of people. And that's where sometimes I feel a little bit protective of it, like, hey, let's hire the right people. Let's hire good people. Let's put people in these positions that we know are on that mission, because I also know that basketball done the wrong way can be harmful. Players can become so wrapped up in their identity of basketball. You can push winning over everything else. We've talked about this many times. Having a great culture and winning are not mutually exclusive. You can absolutely do both. And I think that if you do not anchor yourself to a really big why and a really big purpose, then all of the other things can be defeating. Like not even things that are personal to you. Like, to be honest with you, I'm not trying to be in judgment of some of these coaches that have been hired lately, but that can be defeating. When I know some really good people in the profession that would do a great job. Let's just be honest. The two we mentioned earlier, Will Wade and Chris Beard, they replaced two guys that we know to be good people. You know what I mean? They're really good people, not flawless, but good people. And they were replaced by
good
two
coaches and
and
good
good
coaches.
and good coaches. I said this, I retweeted this yesterday, but look, Kermit Davis, we've met him, had many interactions with him, whatever. He's a good guy. He's a good coach. I mean, I remember them beating Michigan State in the tournament. Like, they had a great run at Middle Tennessee. He goes through, and he just celebrated his 40th anniversary, his wedding anniversary. Like, that's rare. That's hard to do. Like, he's doing a lot of great things in his life, but just didn't win enough. So let's hire this other person that, whether we like it or not, sends a message to kids, like, despite what you do, no matter what you do, if you can win, you're going to get this. And that can be defeating to people, even though it doesn't directly affect me. I think there's a lot of things in the game that can be discouraging. There's a lot of things in your own team that can be discouraging. And, I think the main point we're trying to make to coaches here is just, man, that passion, that purpose, that why has got to be big.
Well, let me build on that, because I think you're right on that. Is some coaches are watching that. They're seeing those examples you gave, but they're also seeing examples in Missouri or Arkansas or up in Oregon, and they're coaching high school in one of those areas, and they're seeing a coach who wins but isn't transformational, who doesn't treat people well, who cheats, who maybe gets a bunch of transfers and illegally recruits, and they're sitting here grinding away at trying to build a strong culture, trying to build a strong program, and maybe they got fired after 3 years, and that is defeating. And I think what you're saying, TJ, is be encouraged by your purpose, regardless of win and loss. And we're not saying, like, me and you both, like, we're extremely competitive. Me and you will get in fights on ping pong or golf or basketball. Like, we want to win, and you do have to win in this profession to keep your job. So we're not just saying, like, build a culture that's full of kumbayas and everybody talking about their feelings and doesn't matter. No, we're saying both. The point is, don't get defeated. You see people getting jobs that you're like, well, how are they getting the job? And I'm not, and I'm doing things right. No, lay your head down at night knowing I think, are we still talking about culture? That you're building a strong culture, that a culture that is changing lives and changing, not just now, but for many years to come. So I think that's what we're trying to say.
Yeah. So, coaches, I know this might have come across a little bit like a vent session, and it probably was, just to be honest with you. I think that there's a lot of coaches out there trying to fight the good fight, trying to use the game of basketball in a really good way while being competitive, while trying to be great at their profession, which you should try and do. And I think your players deserve that. You trying to be a great coach, whether it's in player development, whether it's in your systems and strategies, like, you should. I mean, I think that's the common ground between you and the players. They want to be good at basketball. You want to be good at coaching them in basketball. But the more important big picture is, really using the game in a way that benefits everybody. And there can be a lot of tough situations out there. There can be a lot of bad examples out there. And, like, how we interpret those and how we let those not defeat us, but we stay encouraged in fighting the good fight, to try and use the game for the right reasons, the right purposes, and use it in the right way. So, coaches, one, stay encouraged. Two, really, if you haven't, dig deep into why you do what you do. And if anything, Sam, I know we like to say this a lot, but just double down on what you're doing. Don't let the other part of it pull you away in the other direction. Double down, and that you're a transformational coach that wants to make a really big impact and a really big difference I think is a really important reminder for coaches.
Yeah. Let me just say one last thing too. I know you're wrapping up, TJ, but I think too, surround yourself with a circle, a tribe. It can that can be a really small circle. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's three, maybe it's somebody on your staff or outside your staff. I know I've got a few people that I can call when I do get that email, when I do have an issue, when I feel defeated or I feel challenged, and I can be encouraged by them. They might say, "Hey, Sam, man, you're doing a phenomenal job." And it's not some fake praise. It's real. They know me. They know who I am. They know what I'm about. But do you have those people in your life?
Yeah.
If you don't have those people, get them, or listen to this, save this podcast, text it to yourself, and listen to it when you run into a rut, and remind yourself of why you do what you do. We all need to be that. And even the strongest, most confident people, we all have doubt. We all have it at some point. And stay true to yourself and stay true to your mission.
Fill yourself with good stuff too. Hopefully this podcast helps with that, but there's a lot of other, like you said, good influences, good people, good books. I came across a really interesting study the other day that, and again, not trying to get spiritual, but people that read their Bible 2 days a week, right? There was a little bit of an impact on different situations in their life. And in 3 days, there was a little bit more, but it wasn't hugely significant, to be honest. But those that read it 4 days a week or more, there was a significant impact on their lives in positive ways and dealing with problems and all that kind of stuff. And I think the same plays out here. Like, you have to spend multiple days, 4, 5, 6 days a week, surrounding yourself with good conversations, with good people, with good learnings, with all of the things that fill you up, because it is very easy in the coaching profession to pour out way more than you get poured into. And you cannot neglect yourself in becoming the best version of yourself. And when your cup is full, you'll pour it out on others. When your cup is empty, they're likely to feel that as well. So continue to fill yourself with good stuff, coaches. And I think that that'll be really beneficial in your career. Hey, listen, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Hit us up at Hardwood_hustle. Hey, he is Sam, I am TJ, and we are the Hardwood Hustle.
Thanks again for tuning into this episode of the Hardwood Hustle, where we believe in the value of a coach. Be sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Hardwood_hustle to stay up to date on the latest episodes and share your thoughts with our coaching community. From the Hardwood Hustle team, thanks again. We can't wait to be with you again next week.